are heroes, the epitome of what it means to put service above self. We owe them thanks for our freedom. They've sacrificed for us, and now we honor our veterans. Thanks for joining us for our Veterans Voices special. I'm Katherine Guyon. Over the next hour, we will hear their stories in their own words and meet members of the community who have made it their mission to serve our veterans. We bring you this special from the Tri-State Military Veterans Museum in Belmont. It serves as a way to honor the area's veterans, but also to educate future generations so our brave men and women will not be forgotten. As they say, freedom is not free. You'll hear more about the history that's here in this building coming up a little later in the show. More than 16 million American men and women served in the military during World War II. 839,000 of them were from the state of Ohio, 1,800 from Monroe County, and now only 3 remain, the last of the greatest generation from the county.
I'm George Cook.
Ray Norris.
Gunstolder.
Separate branches and different jobs, but all 3 men bonded by the sacrifices they made for their country.
I'm proud to serve my country anytime.
For George Cook, it was the Navy.
I was on landing crafts, LCMs and LCVPs and PRs and stuff like that. I was amphibious.
He did all that aboard the USS Marquette, traveling more than 32,000 miles across all 7 seas and 7 continents.
Yeah, I had a lot of miles. Went around the world, crossed the equator twice, and I could tell you where all the places I've been.
Then on December 14th, I got on a big ship at night, Queenie was it. 36,000 guys on that ship. Got on the ship the 14th and 20th, and we landed in Scotland.
Ray Norris was drafted into the Army while still in high school. As part of a replacement company, he was never far from combat in France, Belgium, and Germany, and was part of Battle of the Bulge.
Well, we took care of guys. We took them up to the battlefield. And also we took the dead people out to the cemeteries in Belgium.
Foot soldier, mostly guard duty and so forth.
Glenn Stalder says his job was as an infantryman while he was stationed in Japan.
I was in the 77th Infantry there. They deactivated in March of 1946, and then I ended up in Tokyo with the 1st Cavalry Division.
All 3 men were strangers during the war, never crossing paths. While they were separate, there's something that changed the course of all of their enlistments: the dropping of the atomic bomb.
I was just getting ready to go to Japan when they dropped it.
Yeah, when they dropped
It kept me from making that trip.
Yeah, I was headed there and ended up, didn't get there till they dropped the bomb, and then they turned around and sent us to Australia.
I was still in Camp Rucker, Alabama when they dropped it, but I ended up in Japan.
As unique as each experience was, they're still joined together by pride in country and in service.
I am proud of it. I am, yes, I am.
I'd do it over.
I would too.
A big thank you to the American Legion post in Woodsfield for hosting a celebration for these men when we went to meet them. Obviously, the military was only part of their lives. You can learn more about their stories at WTRF.com. While we are losing members of the greatest generation far too fast, there are still several in the Ohio Valley who are willing to share their stories. You'll meet another one of them next. Veterans Voices will be right back. Welcome back. He got a letter saying that President Roosevelt needed to see him. That's how Palmer Love says his military service began in 1944. He tried to join the Navy, but it was full, so he joined the Army, and that's how his military service began.
Well, I wasn't smart enough to be afraid at that time. I was 18 years old. Hey, it wasn't nothing, nothing excites you. It wasn't bad. I mean, it was just the idea. It was for 4 months there, so never saw snow. Never come so near freezing to death in my life, but
The warm weather of basic training in Fort Hood wasn't bad for a young 18-year-old from Ohio. Texas would be the first stop of many across the world for Palmer Love.
31 days on a ship going overseas. There was 5,000 soldiers, 1,000 officers, 1,000 USO troops or people, and the crew of the ship on that ship going over.
That journey included several stops on the way to the Philippines.
When I got overseas, we was in a replacement depot, and they was bringing people in and shipping them into units, and then along towards the end of the war, I got transferred into a division that was, I knew, they didn't tell us, but we knew it was there for the invasion of Japan. But Truman took care of that.
Love never made it to Japan because the atomic bomb was dropped and the war ended. He spent his service in charge of administration for a company.
But I was in a MASH unit. You heard MASH on television. Well, that's the kind of an outfit I was in. It was a mobile Army surgical hospital. And I had nothing to do with the hospital, but I was the first sergeant of the company that just administration of the people was there.
Love said while there, he had Japanese prisoners of war that worked for him. While he did learn a bit of the language to get their attention, he was surprised to learn that some spoke English.
How do you speak English? He said, I got 2 years at UCLA. But he was in the Japanese Army.
When it was time to come home, Love said his ship sailed through a typhoon on the way back. And when he finally returned stateside, it was almost a surprise to his family.
In California, we come on the train, and at Southern California, his train stopped, and I run in, and I sent a telegram to him when I was on my way home. Well, they got the telegram in the mail the day before I got home. Wouldn't take $1 million for it, wouldn't give a nickel to do it again.
A funny story Love tells about coming home from the military. While he was overseas, his family actually moved, so he hadn't seen his new home or their farm until the bus driver dropped him off at the mailbox. It wasn't only the men who were called to serve during World War II. Women also played a critical role in the war effort. Louise Adams was one of them. Hear her stories from her time as a Navy wave next. Although you'll find women in the military now, that was not always the case. During World War II, they were needed to fill non-combat positions. So for the first time, women were able to enlist. Louise Adams was one of them. She recalls her time as a Navy wave with a lot of laughs and a lot of love for the time she spent serving her country.
If I had a chance, I'd probably go back. I've questioned myself, why did I come home?
After graduating high school in Moundsville, Louise Adams tried to enter the workforce.
My mother wanted us, all she kept saying, get a job, get a job.
But it turns out life had other plans, pointing her in the direction of the U.S. Navy.
I tried 2 or 3 places, and I just didn't fit in. So I was going up Route 2, going towards Wheeling, and there's a big sign up there, I need you, or I want you, something to that effect. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to research that and see if he does me.
Adams joined the Navy Waves, or Women's Auxiliary Voluntary Emergency Service. After that, it was boot camp in New York, which she remembers included marching and tests to find their specialties. Hers was numbers. That meant Adams was assigned to Pensacola, Florida, working in payroll.
The captain of the ship, he sent all the information to us on shore. When we got it done, we either took a small plane or a small boat and went out and had payroll.
When the men were about to go on R&R, Adams explained that the ship's captain would have them receive their payroll on board, so they wouldn't have to wait when finally returning to the States.
We would have to ask them, tell me your name. If it correspond, they would have to make a little check mark.
When Adams remembers working in the office, she talks about her friends and her boss. She says he treated everyone like family, taking the men and women on trips, like deep-sea fishing.
At that time, the men didn't accept the women in the service. And the boys in our office, they had to walk the line.
When her service was finished, Adams came home and met her husband, who was also a veteran, and started a family. But she will always be part of a group of groundbreaking women.
I was determined to try to do what I think, if it hasn't been for us, they might not have got their pay.
A fun fact about Louise Adams, she's actually quite the musician. She shared with us a story about performing for country star Doc Williams. You can hear it at WTRF.com. And women like Louise Adams paved the way for future generations of women in the military. Danielle Harmon was one of them. She says she knew her life was always meant to be about service. That led her to 24 years in the Air Force. Those years were spent traveling around the world, simultaneously raising a family and serving.
It just was always something that I knew I wanted to do. I wanted to serve.
Inspired by her family, there wasn't much doubt where Danielle Harmon would end up.
My two great uncles and my dad were all in the Air Force. My two great uncles in the Army Air Corps.
Originally, Harmon was chosen for Armed Forces Radio and Television, but lack of space in the program meant a change in career path.
As an intelligence analyst, there were lots of different things that I did. And none of it I can really talk much about.
Harmon had top secret security clearance, meaning that much of her work still remains a secret. But she will tell you she worked long shifts all over the world, including Japan, England, Hawaii, some time in Germany and South Korea, and eventually back in the United States.
Everything that I did affected combat operations in one way or another. Everything that I did had an effect on whether or not we kept the United States safe, and sometimes even more importantly, our boots on the ground after 9/11 safe.
9/11 changed the lives of all Americans, especially those of service members.
And we knew immediately that this was organized and an intentional attack, and we kicked into gear doing the things that we do.
Harmon was stationed in England during the attack, and she says the feeling of uncertainty that swept the country also rippled through the military.
We didn't know, my ex-husband and I didn't know if we were going to be deployed. So at one point we considered bringing our kids back home to leave them with my parents until we knew what was going on.
After 24 years, she said she knew it was time to retire. So Harmon held the ceremony in a place that was very special to her, the Women in Military Service for America Museum.
We just assume that veterans are men. That's not the right answer. That's not the right answer at all. Women in the military go through an awful lot. It's combat and whatever else, and women are making strides in doing the things that everybody said that they couldn't do.
Harmon rose to the rank of Master Sergeant and says she would not trade those years in the Air Force for anything.
It was my choice to stay for 24 years, and I loved it. I loved every minute. My life has been and will always be about service in one way or another.
Harmon has 2 children who were raised all across the world at her different duty stations. He was promised the country's highest honor, but never received it. Although Fred B. McGee has passed away, his family never stopped fighting for their hero. Finally, it seems he will get the recognition he deserves. The corporal's story is next. Welcome back. We were fortunate enough to meet Fred B. McGee several years ago when we interviewed him for Veterans Voices. He has since passed away, but we honor him again because his family is very close to receiving the Congressional Medal of Honor he was promised. Mr. Fred would have told you he was not brave for his actions during his service, but hearing his story will probably make you think otherwise. He was drafted into the Army and sent to the heart of combat in 1951 during the Korean War as part of the 17th Infantry. This is his story in his own words.
It wasn't a picnic, but we survived.
Corporal Fred B. McGee often says he just did what he had to do to survive, which in his case included acts of heroism during the Korean War. After being drafted into the Army, completing basic training and leadership school, McGee found himself in combat.
Come and picked us up one night and go to a place. Everybody gets there and you get everybody together and they load you all in trucks and they take you from there up as close as they can get. Probably get about a mile or half a mile in the front line, Heartbreak Ridge.
On the ridge, McGee had to endure harsh conditions like cold well below zero.
Put all your clothes on and then you put your helmet on and put your rifle here and you zip the bag up. Just lay there with sleep. A lot of guys got caught in their bag. They killed a lot of them in the bag. They never got a chance to get out.
Sometimes going days without relief and always on alert.
The enemy was over here and we was over here, and we'd go into guys we had white suits on. All of them put white suits on the other side, and I don't know how many guys they killed and wounded. They come over that hill.
McGee himself had several close brushes with death.
I was on the outpost one night, and something said, "Patch." Bullet went right by my head. It ends up on the upper hill because you can see it, but it's a good ways away. And the sniper shot at me and dismissed me going.
And was wounded.
He was talking on the radio, and that shell landed right in between us and hit him all up through the back. And up there because he was on his knees talking on the radio. And I was laying down shooting a machine gun, and I got hit in the leg down into there.
McGee also found himself forced to take command after his squad leader was wounded and the second in command couldn't take over.
And I stayed there, and then I went out again a little further. I got wounded again. Another shell, I saw it coming, about that big, mortar shells, and I couldn't move, and it just froze and it came right out in front of me and blew up and hit me up and through here.
And despite being injured again, McGee was willing to risk his life to help his fellow soldiers to safety.
He got hit, he got hit with something in his arm, a mortar shell or something, just tore the side of the leg out. And he was walking along crying, hollering. And then the guy come, another soldier come along, he had a piece of shrapnel in here. And so we got between them and helped him back to the line where we started out at. No, I don't pray, but I just, the necessity, you gotta stay alive.
McGee received the Silver Star, 2 Purple Hearts, and several other accolades and honors for his service. He told 7 News that his commanding officer wrote a recommendation for the Medal of Honor, but he never received it. Congressman Bill Johnson's office announced that McGee's Medal of Honor is very close to finally becoming a reality. The congressman said that Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin also agreed to the request after hearing McGee's story. The next step is congressional approval, and then President Biden will make the final decision. Over the years, we've kept in touch with McGee's family. They are overjoyed that this is finally happening, even if Mr. Fred is not here to see it. They say he was a man of truth and courage. Honor, respect, and duty. You could say that's the motto of the Moundsville Veterans Honor Guard. They make sure every veteran receives the proper final salute, and you'll hear why they do it coming up on Veterans Voices. Gone but not forgotten. When a veteran passes away, their memory lives on through their loved ones. And there's a special group making sure each veteran gets a send-off fit for their service, and the family gets a memorable final farewell. The Moundsville Veterans Honor Guard does exactly what their name says, honor, and it's a deeply personal mission for each and every one of its members.
Honor and respect and duty. You can't leave them behind.
The veterans deserve all the respect that they can get.
Respect even until the final salute.
I've been in uniform since Boy Scouts all my life, and I'm proud to do what we do in this honor guard.
Being in the Moundsville Veterans Honor Guard is a selfless service.
All branches of service, active, reserve, guard, who served from Korea, Vietnam, the Cold War, Persian Gulf, and beyond.
26 veterans and non-veterans make up its ranks, and each year they lay to rest more than 100 veterans with a personalized service fitting of the honors they deserve.
The veteran
deserves the final respect, and we're there to see to it that he receives it.
A way of showing respect for the guys, particularly who went to Vietnam, that didn't get the respect when they came home.
Prayers, speeches, the presentation of the flag, a 21-gun salute, and the playing of taps. It's a lasting memory, and oftentimes the last thing a veteran's family sees.
It's all service from the heart. It's in their blood, in their heart.
They do nothing but give back and want nothing in return, but being in the group is a reward within itself.
I joined and gained a whole new family.
A family that supports each other and learns from each other.
We learn from the past. I'm trying to learn from them what it was like for them, and they're learning from me what I had to do.
Each salute, every displaying of the flag, and each goodbye, all done with honor, respect, and because it's the right thing to do.
I'll probably stay in this till I expire. I really enjoy it.
I wish I could do more.
I should have done a long time ago.
It is truly a blessing and honor to be a part of this organization.
It's the most powerful and recognizable symbol of America, and it's with a veteran until it's time to say one final goodbye. If you've ever been to a military funeral, you've seen the American flag draped over the casket, then folded with precision and given to a veteran's family. The Moundsville Veterans Honor Guard goes one step farther with their thank you. They give each family a small wooden box, and the way it's made is giving a new mission to a small group of people.
Every funeral that we do, their hands are in it with that display case.
Every cut.
It's what it's about, you know, it's the right thing to do.
Every nail.
So they know what each one of them boxes entails. It entails the death of a veteran.
And every piece of each flag box is made with precision because it's much more than just a few pieces of oak. It will hold a lasting symbol of service, the flag that drapes a veteran's casket.
You get drawn into the emotions of the event, and it's so overwhelming. And then you see that when you walk away from that funeral, this family has a lasting memory.
The Moundsville Veterans Honor Guard gives a flag box to the family at every military funeral. It's a powerful moment, perhaps made more significant because of where these boxes are made.
Not all the inmates, but a lot of the inmates that participate in the educational program are veterans themselves. They take a lot of pride in their work, but they also know that each one of those boxes represents a deceased veteran. So I think that's why it means so much to them.
More than 500 flag boxes have been assembled in recent years inside this shop at Northern Correctional Center.
We love the idea of them being able to have a sense of community and give something back.
It's a program of the West Virginia Department of Education and West Virginia Schools of Diversion and Transition as a way to give inmates skills when they return to society.
Most of these men will be released someday. You could warehouse them here and give them nothing, and they return to society exactly the way that they came in.
Hedrick says the stats speak for themselves, that education keeps these men and women from returning to the prison system.
They leave prison without so much as a high school equivalency. There's about a 70% chance that they return to prison. If they leave with a bachelor's degree, there's a less than 5% chance that they recidivate and come back.
The program is bigger than just building a cabinet or a flag box. It's about changing lives.
A lot of them come from backgrounds that aren't so good, and they've gotten into some trouble in the past, and even within the facility they get into trouble from time to time, and it's kind of amazing when you got guys that come to class that it's like a 180. You know, they stop getting into trouble because they have something productive to do.
And giving back.
They have contributed to the heartwarming effect that it has, and I see the pride that they have.
The Moundsville Veterans Honor Guard fundraises to pay for all of the supplies to make those flag boxes so that each military funeral and keepsake is done at no cost to the families. They are able to do it all thanks to the generosity of the community. Far too many of our veterans are struggling long after their service ends. PTSD remains a prevalent issue. When we return on Veterans Voices, we'll see some unique ways veterans here in the Ohio Valley are getting help. Years of a person's life spent in sacrifice and sometimes struggle don't always end when a veteran is discharged. Sometimes what they saw and experienced can come home with them. And for a few veterans who do struggle with PTSD, that followed them to a ranch in Salineville, Ohio. We first introduced you to DLR Mustang Ranch and their healing mission about 3 years ago. Now, with the help of some very special animals, veterans have come and gone, but they're leaving without their struggles.
The horses just, is something about them. It's helping me find myself again.
They come to DLR Mustang Ranch a little bit lost, both the veterans and the wild Mustangs.
It was hard to get me to talk much. I stayed at home, didn't really want anybody around. Came here and they put me with Miss Ellie and something clicked.
But they leave with a new life, and in the Mustangs' case, sometimes a new home.
It's like the guys in the military, guys and the girls. You become a family. We have friends and family on the outside of the military. Nothing can compare with the bond that two soldiers who've been through combat can share.
For 3 years now, Dale and Renee Lackey have built DLR Mustang Ranch on the foundation of unbreakable bonds, the shared experience of military service, and the connection between man and Mustang.
Sometimes the bond with your horse is stronger than the bond between husband and wife. The only bond stronger is the bond between man and God.
It's created a place where veterans with PTSD or anyone struggling mentally can heal. And finally, the first group graduated from their 6-week program.
We've struggled to get to this point. It's been a hard uphill climb, and I'm just so proud of the veterans and the work that they've done. And I know it's not easy to give up 6 weeks of their life and come here, but it's just been amazing to watch.
They've seen the change happening before their eyes. For the veterans, it's most notable in the Mustangs. What they don't realize is each moment of training is also helping them too.
To me, the change was, you could pet him while he eats, you could pet his nose, you can scratch his ears a little bit, but the change was able to touch whole body. From 1 minute where you couldn't touch him to that same afternoon, I took off his tag, I put a halter on him, ran him through some paces. That was the same day.
But you won't find just veterans within the stalls. First responders are welcome, or anyone who struggles with anxiety. If you need help, the Mustangs are here.
These animals, it doesn't matter how it is that your heart got damaged in whatever way that it was, they're gonna do everything that they can to help bring you back. And he's definitely helped me with that.
It's a never-ending story, we hope.
DLR Mustang Ranch says this program is only the beginning. They will continue to welcome veterans free of charge. Anyone who could benefit from some time with the horses can contact them. It doesn't have to be for that 6-week program. Would you believe it if we told you that Ohio is at the center of a groundbreaking PTSD treatment that's quite literally saving the lives of veterans? Well, it is. And in fact, that program is expanding. How it's alleviating the struggles of veterans and first responders. Next. What would you do to change your life? For the far too many veterans and first responders struggling with PTSD, the answer is just about anything. Last year, we brought you inside a small room at the Harrison County Sheriff's Department, where a new treatment was pulling veterans from the lingering trauma of military service and towards a new life. Thanks to the success of that life-altering program, it's now expanding across Ohio.
And I just reached the point in my life, that I couldn't stand what I was doing. And I tried to commit suicide once, my daughter ran to the basement just screaming, "No, Daddy, no."
For 50 years, Terry Wildman carried what happened in the jungles of Vietnam with him. He sought treatment, and it helped, but it wasn't enough. Then he found TMS in Harrison County.
This machine right here, a lot of guys coming in here having post-traumatic stress to severe levels, to where they're thinking about doing bad things. And this gives them hope.
Dirk Harkins has faced his own struggles with PTSD. He too had TMS treatment change his life, but he had to travel to Texas for it.
To know that I have brothers and sisters back here in Ohio struggling from the same thing and didn't have the ability to get this like I did, the fight was on.
The fight continues to expand the treatment in Ohio, but it's getting easier. Thanks to funding from the state, it will be more widely available, and not just to veterans, but first responders too.
You may be able to be better focused, better response times. You may have, we work with people all over the country, and we hear, my wife likes me again, my children tolerate me again. I'm able to sleep better, focus better, concentrate, and then how does that impact your work?
TMS treatments work with magnets. As Harkins describes it, it reboots the brain.
I haven't slept for 50 years. Every night in my life, I'm back in the jungle. Something's wrong. I couldn't do what I wanted to do.
The treatment is FDA approved for migraines, anxiety, and OCD, but it's also helping participants with a critical basic function. They go from restless nights to a more sound sleep.
I couldn't believe what was happening. I thought, my God, where has this been years and years ago?
While the treatments are 5 days a week for 30 days, the results come fairly quickly. And even after you're done, the program has a way to make sure the benefits of TMS don't wear off.
Let's say in a couple months your sleep starts going down. We are notified by our technology, and the doctors are notified, the peer support people are notified, and we'll give you a call.
They call it a quality of life machine, and Harkins says all it takes is commitment to the program to get those life-changing results.
And we're seeing that it's reducing opioid cravings, alcohol. It's relieving pain, mobility. It's amazing some of the things I'm seeing, how it's working.
TMS treatments will be available in Barnesville, New Lexington, Columbus, and Youngstown. And of course, the center at the Harrison County Sheriff's Department will still be there too. Anyone who could benefit from this treatment can call Dirk Harkins at the number you see there on your screen. Coming up on Veterans Voices, their machines are sewing away, creating patriotic patterns. Meet the group honoring our veterans with a special handmade gift next. Welcome back. Sometimes thank you is not enough. There are other ways we can show gratitude to our veterans. For a group of women, it's with their sewing machine, turning fabric into works of art with meaning. They are Quilts of Valor.
I always tell the guys when we give them to them, I says, there's a lot of hands that touch this quilt, and when quilters are quilting, we're always thinking about who's getting the quilt.
As the scissors cut and the machines sew, veterans are on their minds.
I mean, we enjoy getting together and we enjoy sewing, but it is nice to know that the finished project is appreciated.
Ohio Valley Quilts of Valor started with a group of women who loved the craft, but the Quilt Guild quickly turned into community service.
And we had cut out quilts for different agencies, foster care, whatever, and Quilts of Valor was one of them. It was just, pretty much getting started. And a lot of the ladies took the kits for the Quilts of Valor.
And just like that, a hobby became a mission to gift as many veterans as possible with a handmade show of gratitude.
That's how the group started. They wanted to do something, that was kind of like another civilian award for the veterans. And but it's awesome to talk to the guys, and it's great.
The group works in different areas across the Ohio Valley, all thanks to donations. Each quilt starts with some who cut the fabric to the precise shapes.
Put them in bags with the pattern, and then the ladies in the different groups get theirs and they sew them up.
Then others get together to assemble the designs.
Everybody kind of picks what they think they'd like to work on, and we just sit and sew. We socialize a lot.
Once the quilts are finished, they're personally presented to veterans. It's a moment that brings great joy to those who make them.
It's just so rewarding to do that for them.
And those who receive them.
And we try to encourage the fellows use the quilts. They're not to take them home and fold them up and keep them safe. We want them to use them.
Quilts of Valor is actually a national organization with about 3,000 members. If you would like to learn more, request a quilt for a veteran, or donate to their cause, you can look up Ohio Valley Quilts of Valor on Facebook. For the last hour, you've watched our backdrop change as we move through the Tri-State Military Veterans Museum. And now it's time to learn more about what you see. We'll give you more of a tour of the history after the break. As you've probably seen on the walls inside, there is such a rich history here at the Tri-State Military Veterans Museum. So let's hear a little bit more about it from the people whose mission it's become to preserve that history for future generations.
This way they don't have to travel to Washington. They don't have to travel all over to see what they deserve. They have this little place here. They can call it their own.
It belongs to our veterans, and it's right here in Belmont, Ohio. From the Outdoor Heroes Wall to the history-covered walls inside, the Tri-State Military Veterans Museum was the idea of Floyd Simpson.
But his idea was he wanted someplace locally to honor our vets. Everything is done here to honor our veterans, our females and our male veterans, because they need it. They need to be honored. They need to know that we appreciate them, we love them.
His dream is now a reality, but it's not just honoring veterans here in Belmont or even just in Ohio. Each and every item is donated, coming from places far across the country.
We had a couple Vietnam veterans come in one time and started to cry at our little Vietnam era. And they just broke down and cried. They said they never expected that.
From the Civil War to Afghanistan, there's a place to reflect on service from all eras and all places. And the Tri-State Military Veterans Museum is always expanding. Their latest project will be adding a bronze statue to commemorate military dogs. While it's for the veterans, it's also for each and every person in the Ohio Valley to have a place to know their history.
So the next generation knows what our generation and the generation before us did, so they can have the freedoms that they have today.
The museum is located at 101 East Barrister Street in Belmont. They are open from 1 to 4 on Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays from May to November. Call 740-761-0155 if you would like to visit or learn more. Thanks for joining us for our Veterans Voices special. To each and every one of our veterans out there, thank you is not enough. We're grateful for our freedom and for your sacrifice. We honor you today and every day.